Welcome back. We're talking about automated podcast editing here today, and Mitch here. I've missed a day yesterday with YouTube. Not so happy about it. However, it was the weekend and I did get to see Fred again live, so it was totally worth it. But today we're back into it and we're talking about this podcast production workflow. Basically, I have covered this here before. If you want to go in depth on the actual automation itself, go to this video here called Cut Podcast Costs. And that goes into great detail of step-by-step setup of the make.com scenario so that you can get a good feel for how to set up the automation itself. This particular workflow that I'm showing you right now is based on the content operating system that I've created for my own company, where I run a niche pet care brand. We do about 500K a year. I work on it 1 day a week or less. And the idea is currently we're not scaling at all, because if we did have to scale, we did $1.3 million the first year and I was working 6 days a week. I don't really want to do that. It kind of sits nicely at 500K a year, but I think we can do better. And by having an operating system that kind of ties everything together, we'll be able to do that so much more efficiently. Plus, we want to launch a few extra brands. That's the reason why I'm creating this particular system. And I'm sharing it because my theory is SaaS is dead. All of these micro SaaS apps that are basically just a wrapper on top of a few prompts are just going to completely die. It's so much easier to build your own that is exactly how you want it. And that's exactly what I'm showing in these videos. Cool. So back to the podcast production. So if you haven't watched the other videos, I highly recommend you go back to the beginning and watch them. You'll understand how some of these fit in, like the brand assets, for example. When we're adding this in, we have to choose the brand asset that aligns to the brand that we're lining up. And then the rest of the workflow will work way better. So I actually have a transcript for this particular podcast, so I'm going to do this for real. Our podcast is called The Pet Care Report. We have 3 different hosts for that. We pay them per episode, plus they get a commission on any sponsorships that we bring into the podcast as well. And it works out pretty well. It allows us to cover a whole bunch of different topics in the pet care niche, which is pretty cool. So we have this particular transcript here. So for the host name is Dr. Megan Barrett. And then the guest name is Enya Yushchenko, and we'll add that guest name in here. The episode number, I don't actually know. I think we're up to maybe 0. Well, let's have a look. The petcarereport.com. So we're going to be up to episode 27 for that. So we'll put in 27. The published date is going to be this week, and the transcript will now go here. So basically, before I type all of that in, basically what I'm doing is I'm just giving it the bare minimum information, including the transcript, and then creating all of the assets that we need. So it's going to create an outline of the podcast summary notes. It's going to create timestamps, notes, and resources. Then we also upload it into YouTube. So we need a YouTube title, we need a YouTube description, YouTube thumbnail, titles, and then the final human edited version for that. Then we need to promote it, right? So we're creating a promotional email that gets done automatically. And then if we want to create content social media posts on top of that, then we can also add these in here as well. But like I said, in order for us to get this underway, we just need the podcast name, host name, guest name, episode number, then the transcript in here. Oops, I didn't copy it yet. So I'll just copy the entire transcript and paste that in there, and we're good to go. So all we need to do now is just hit this create main assets button. And what this does is it sends the information through a webhook into make.com, which then feeds it through OpenAI, ChatGPT, and then creates all of the assets that we need for our particular outline and resources and so forth. So the way that I've got it set up is it comes in through the webhook, pulls the record, so all of the different information from that particular record that we just filled out. I do set some different variables here with the tools, so it just feeds it easier into ChatGPT and OpenAI. And what I'm noticing is that the more advanced I become in building these particular automations in make.com, the more I'm beginning to use variables, because it's so much easier at times to set variables and pull variables with the tool rather than trying to find it in each module. And it's just, you can build way cleaner automations doing it that way. So first things first is we feed all of that information into the OpenAI. So we're using a JSON script here, feeding it in, and asking it to produce the introduction, 3 key takeaways, and a conclusion for the podcast. The other way that I was doing it was creating an outline first, and it got a little bit messy, and I'm going to talk about that in the next video where I show you how we actually create blog posts, which is absolutely mind-blowing workflow. And so make sure you subscribe. That's going to come out next. But it wasn't working as well for this, and what I found was easier for this particular summary of the podcast notes because it didn't have to be so long. If we just asked for the introduction, top 3 key takeaways, and conclusion in the first one, and then in the second one, asking for some of the other things we need, which are the top 10 timestamps for the podcast itself, the 5 quotes by the guest speaker, and any notable resources. So if they're mentioning any links, any social media handles, and so forth, then we would pick up all of that and pull it into the notes as well. And then it sends it back. So by now we should have that information here. So let's expand that and just have a look at the quality. So join Dr. Megan Barrett as she welcomes Dr. Anya Yashenko, a holistic veterinarian and expert in animal communication, to an insightful episode of the podcast. This session is packed blah, blah, blah. Here are the 3 compelling insights you won't want to miss. Holistic pet nourishment, emotional pet owner connection, end of life insights. And then here's the conclusion here, which is pretty solid, right? And I like having short, concise, 3 key points with a paragraph. So that's the what I wrote in the prompts in order to get that outcome. So there's very little editing here, if any at all, to actually add. So I'm just going to add that there. Then the other things here are these particular sections. So we've got our timestamps, the top 5 quotes, and then the notable resources. So I'll actually change the headlines for each of these sections. So I'll just put here podcast timestamps, and these are structured them so that they're ready to go for both YouTube and Spotify. So on Spotify, if you're adding transcripts, at least I've been told by my team, that you just need to add it in the brackets there, just like this, and it creates those particular timestamps for us. The one downside with this particular type of transcript, so I imagine this came from probably Descript from our video editor, is that these timestamps won't be absolutely accurate. But if you pull in a transcript from YouTube, their particular transcripts are much more detailed in terms of the timing. So the timing becomes super accurate. So if you create a YouTube video and you want to do chapters and stuff, then my recommendation would be to pull the transcript from YouTube itself. Here, I'll just do the top 5 quotes. We could keep the timestamps there, I guess. We don't really need it, but they're probably not going to be super accurate either, but we can just add that. Actually, I'm just going to delete them because I know they won't be accurate. But the reason why we do the quotes is mostly in case we want to use them on social media, then we can just pull them out and put them onto a Canva template, and it's very easy to do. Then the notable resources. So the exact resource is the Path of Bliss. So I would just edit these down into shorter versions, and you could probably get ChatGPT to get this way closer. So that could be like part of the optimization process is getting ChatGPT so training it on the exact way that we want it to structure the outcome. But that's pretty much ready to go. Cool. So now that we have that, then basically the next step in the workflow is to create the YouTube assets. So the YouTube assets is going to read this one here that we just filled out, the human edited podcast summary, and it's going to begin creating everything for YouTube. So if we have a look at this workflow as well. So this workflow is actually super simple. It's triggered by the webhook, like what I just showed you, and you can see it, it's running through the timestamp chapters there right now. But it's just sending the information from Airtable through OpenAI and back to Airtable again. And this first one's doing YouTube titles, then we're doing YouTube description, timestamps again, and then YouTube thumbnails. So let's have a look what that looks like in this particular section. So for the YouTube titles, I ask it for 2 different types of titles. I'm asking it for like more of your attention capturing titles or your clickbaity type titles, and it provides those ones here. And then I'm asking for more SEO focused titles. So it adds a few different ones here. What I typically end up doing is combining parts of both. It very rarely gets a really good title with in the one go, but there's usually enough information in all of these to produce a pretty good title. Then it produces a description. So for some reason, it produces a title here as well. But in this particular part, I'm just interested in the description. And what we're actually going to do is create that final version down here in a second as well. And then thumbnail titles. So one podcast that I like, and I mean, I like most of their episodes or some of their episodes, but I like the way that they market it, is the Diary of a CEO. So I took the top 10 to 15 YouTube thumbnails and looked at the text on those thumbnails and trained ChatGPT on those particular phrases, and then asking it to do the same for this particular transcript. So it's producing, 3 to 5 words, no more than kind of 18 characters. And these are the texts that we would use on the thumbnail itself. So rather than trying to think of it, we have it there to choose from, ready to go. So all we need to do now is just move this down into the final version that we like. So I'll choose a title in a second, description here. We've already got our main description in the YouTube itself. So as I look at the YouTube titles here, basically the video itself is about understanding your pet's needs. So talking about like animal communication, right? So we're going to look at, okay, unlocking your pet's thoughts, make real or not. I mean, it's not too bad. Hear your cat's secrets, pets talk, truth behind animal communication. So potentially that part of it only. Life-ending care, and that's not exactly it. And holistic pet care is way too broad. In here, animal communication explained by a veterinarian, that could be interesting. Natural diets for pets, holistic veterinary practices, understanding your pet's needs. I like this one. So it actually does put it here. So I'm just going to add this one. All right. So we've already, if we fix that up a bit, the other part is looking at these hashtags. So we generally like to put hashtags in every single YouTube video. Then the timestamps as well. So we can basically just pull the timestamps from up here and it'll be pretty much the same, or we can wait until we put in YouTube and get more accurate ones, which we'll probably do. And even, there are some plugins on YouTube where you can just do the chapters there that will be more accurate as well. But that's pretty much all we need for this particular part of it at this stage. So now we can just take that, upload the video into YouTube, schedule it, good to go, send one of these thumbnail titles to our graphic designer, or if you have a template, you can just do it yourself. Super easy to do. Now that we have that done, then let's create the promo email. And this is where it changes structure a little bit, but done in a way that makes it so much easier to think about and do. So basically, we've got this automation here. And this particular automation is the same for all of our email flows. So again, same sort of trigger where it's webhook, get a record, the promo email template or the promo email prompt is in there. So I've got step-by-step instructions of how I want the prompt to go. Then it actually updates a different record. So it updates the all promo emails record in this particular one. So basically what we've done here is created a centralized location for all of our emails, because it's just going to be so much easier to figure out from here. Actually looking at this now, I need to change the email ID. So in this particular workflow, we've got the ID as a formula. And the reason why is because we've interlinked the record, and you can't really have an interlinked record on the first section. It just seemed to be more reasonable to make a formula at the start, which is choosing the category. So as you can see here, it says podcast or blog post, whatever. And then we want to actually identify what that particular blog post or podcast is. So it's probably not the most ideal way to do it, because I'm actually sending 20 different subject lines here. What would be a better way to structure it, and maybe I'll change this later, but it's okay now, is when I send the information from the make.com automation here, I could update a record. So let's go into this. So when I create this record, I'm sending the brand asset and the podcast category here, but let's pretend that this email preview text was actually the podcast episode name. We could actually do add that there instead. So the podcast ID or the episode number, even potentially that would be an all right option as well, is this email is for this episode number. It's probably a good idea, but I need to fix that up later. But that simply creates a record in here, which then provides us with 20 different email subject lines to choose from. And again, often I find myself adding multiple parts of each email here, and then I'll choose one as well to go into the email preview text. And then this is our final output here for the email. So the email is written in a way that provokes some pain points. It creates a connecting statement to say that if I don't solve it now, then it can get worse later. And then introduce the pet care report, 3 key takeaways, and then a final call to action here. Once we are happy with that, then we just hit approve down here, and somebody can come in and schedule this in the CRM and so forth. So that's the workflow, right? I've taken 20 minutes to explain that. If I was doing this on my own, it probably would have taken 7 minutes to go through and edit all the things, pull out the information I need, and then get it uploaded, get it underway, get the descriptions in place. Even with editing of the thumbnail, it's probably a maximum of a 15-minute job. I have a friend who is getting charged $4,000 a month to do 4 episodes per month like this, plus a little bit of video editing. And the reason why I bring up that is because if you haven't seen Autopod yet, I'm not sponsored. This is not a sponsored video. We use this to edit our podcasts and our summit interviews. It'll do all the editing for you as well. Plus then you've got programs like Submagic that will do the shorts for you. So putting all of these pieces together, you're spending 15 minutes in Airtable, you're spending 5 to 10 minutes in Adobe Premiere editing the full thing. You're spending another 10 minutes in Submagic to find shorts content, pulling all that together. It's taking you an hour's work, and you can probably charge anywhere from $500 to, maybe even $1,000 if you're good at sales to actually do that particular work. And it's taking you an hour. So sky's the limit here. I'm actually very much considering starting a podcast editing agency. If you want to partner, then reach out. I'm open to some partnerships here, so I don't want to run it, but the system behind it is so solid that you can scale up so easily and still do really high quality work. So that's basically the entire workflow. And this is the third workflow in the content operating system. If you haven't watched the first 2 plus the introductory video, go back and watch those. Super valuable to give further context. But there's 2 more to come in the beginning of what I'm showing for this content operating system, which is the blog post generator and then the virtual summit sessions. Overall, they're very much built in a similar way, but the idea here is to customize every workflow in order to make life so much easier for yourself. And that's exactly what we're doing. So if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to let me know to keep making them. And I want to hear in the comments all the questions that you have. I've had a few questions and comments so far. The big thing here is I'm not a technical person. So there's probably times I'm going to explain things and say the wrong words. While I'm trying to get better at that, I really don't care. The thing that I'm great at is building great products, understanding the workflow from A to Z, all the way through how everything interconnects. I can see it all in my mind. And the technical parts, they're easily outsourced. If you're a business owner, you don't want to be a technical founder forever. They're some of the first jobs that you want to outsource. You want to be the thinker, the person, the mastermind behind all of these great ideas, and then working with your team to execute on those so that you can focus on driving growth and building a great team and focusing on the vision. So that's me. See you next time. Bye.